Hi, everybody. My name's Aoife McGowan. I'm 18. I'm the policy director here at YCAT, and I use she, her pronouns. And today we're just going to be going to have a live talking with a couple candidates for different levels of races from around the country. Max, if you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Max Prestigiacomo. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I've organized with YCAT, as part of the climate strikes. I'm really passionate about young people, about climate justice, and about, fighting for socialism, fighting for, restructuring of our systems. And I'm the District 8 alder on the City of Madison Common Council, which I recently elected to, literally 2 weeks ago. So pretty new for me.
All right. Nada, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. We're voting for Bernie delegates right now, and the meeting, of course, in democratic fashion is going over. But my name is Elmikashfi. I am running for Wisconsin State Senate for the 26th Senate District here in Madison. I declared it against a 57-year incumbent. Senator Risser is the longest-serving legislator in the country since 1963. He has since retired, and we have a very diverse and fun field of candidates. And I really hope to bring a very working-class, progressive agenda to our state legislature. I'm 24 years old, and I am a longtime resident of Madison, and I immigrated here from Sudan when I was 6 years old with my family. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Solomon, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, guys. My name is Solomann Rajput. I'm running for Congress, the United States Congress in the 12th Congressional District here in Michigan. I'm a 27-year-old medical student, and I'm actually taking a leave of absence to run because I think the issues in our country are way too urgent, and we're done waiting on our politicians to do something about it. And actually, like Nada, we're going up against a incumbent who has held the seat for a long time. Her family's actually held this seat for 85 years straight. So it's
same with mine. I held it.
Yeah, your family, yours has been in the family too. It's been a family business. So yeah, no, we it's quite the journey, but we're very excited about this election, and our district is very progressive, and I think we deserve a progressive representative. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion today.
All right, yeah, thank you. Albert, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Aoife. Thank you all for having me here today. I really appreciate it. My name is Albert Lee. I use he, him pronouns. I am running to represent the people of the 3rd District of Oregon to Congress. Now, I'm running because, like Solomon and Nada, we're talking about an oligarchy, a rule by elites, multimillionaire career politicians. It's time for us to replace those and replace them with citizen representatives who know the struggle, who won't take corporate contributions, and who will truly represent and fight for the people. So I'm happy to be here. We're 2 days away from the close of our primary. So for those that are in the 3rd District of Oregon, I'm asking for your vote. You can find more information at albertlee2020.com. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, guys. So our first question is, the Democratic establishment has consistently worked to stop candidates on the left from getting elected. The establishment often works exceptionally hard against the will of the people to push moderates forward. As electoral politics has been failing, how do you plan to make a change in America's broken system? Albert, if you'd like to start.
Sure, thank you. That is in a nutshell when we're talking about the hundreds of progressives that are running for Congress this cycle. We are the 3rd iteration since Bernie Sanders first started the movement back in 2015, 2016. In 2018, we had a series of folks that have come in, and today we have got hundreds of progressives again that are standing up to represent the people. Now, the biggest thing that we need to do in order to affect change is to get money out of politics. Money in politics is truly the root of all of the issues that we face, be it the climate emergency, the endless wars, the lack of affordable housing and living wages, the lack of a universal healthcare system. None of that is going to change so long as we maintain this two-party duopoly. In order to change that, we need to elect more citizen representatives that are going to vote in a block. I think right now we've got a good solid 9 or so members of Congress who really are fighting for the people. If we can get another 9 or 10 in, that's a voting block. That's enough to provide the leverage that will truly affect change.
All right, thank you. Nada, if you'd like to speak to that.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry. I said, can you guys please repeat the question? My internet is cutting up, so I didn't hear it.
Oh yeah, totally. So the question was, the Democratic establishment has consistently worked to stop candidates on the left from being elected, oftentimes working exceptionally hard against the will of the people to push moderates forward. As electoral politics is failing, how do you plan to make change in America's broken system? All right. I think Nada is having some internet problems at the moment. Max, if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm texting her too. So yeah, no, I think this is like such a crucial question to ask like candidates ourselves, because like quite frankly, I think electoralism, I've lost hope in it. Like the day I was like, you know, it's a dying solution. We're where we are today because you know, of past failed electoral movements. And I really do see a problem of huge, you know, deification of, or, you know, deifying politicians, and really like placing this emphasis on, you know, how electing people like ourselves will be the sole solution. And I really think now that I'm, you know, on the inside, that it's all about harm reduction. It's all about, you know, sending people into these systems that, you know, we recognize that this is only a part of the puzzle to tackle systemic problems that have plagued this country since the founding of it. You know, this country was founded on slavery. This country was founded on the backs of indigenous peoples that we colonized and pillaged and stole land. And, you know, that's a system that stayed with it the whole time. And we've continuously elected people to that system. And I really see that it's our job to supplement, you know, grassroots actions like yourselves, grassroots movements like YCAT, who are actually working towards a goal that doesn't place an emphasis just on, you know, voting, because as we know, voting is inaccessible. The systemic problems are everywhere. And you know, it's hard not to get cynical. I'm not going to lie, once we're in the inside, because there's just so many, you know, systemic things that are pushing back against me. And, you know, once you guys are elected into office, like it's such a weird situation to be in. And I really think it's on us to be talking about how we're only a supplement to the real solution, which is, you know, grassroots movement, striking and demanding a restructuring of this whole society that has failed everyone. The working class. It's worked for a lot of people at the top of this country, the 1%, but it has failed the working class. And they've spent lots of money to make it seem like it's left versus right when it's really top versus bottom. And I think that's at the heart of all of this, is that we talk about that systemic issue.
All right, thank you. Solomon, if you'd like to speak to that question.
Yeah, so I completely agree with both Albert and Max, different aspects of what they've said. So first of all, like Max said, we cannot simply abdicate our responsibility to our elected leaders and hope that they're just going to figure it out and take care of us. Like, you know, putting these politicians on a pedestal, thinking that they're like other than us, that they know more than us, that they are just going to like take care of us. It's like clearly not been working, right? Like it's not been working for decades and decades, for my whole life, for Max's whole life. Like, you know, for literally our entire experience on this planet. It's actually the reason why I turned away from politics and decided to go and become a doctor, because I was totally disillusioned by how ineffective it seemed our government was at being able to accomplish anything. And then I also agree with what Albert said about how we need to get big money out of our political system. But I think that we need to, because it's the root of all of the evil in this country, and the politicians who are taking this money are just getting legal bribes from the corporations to do their bidding, right? So like that, I agree with all of those statements and that sentiment. But like we need to, I think the important piece is to figure out like how we chart a roadmap from these statements that we totally agree on to actual change, right? Because like ultimately we do need to get, in order to make systemic change, it does need to come, from my opinion, through like laws. And we need a groundswell of people to push our elected leaders to make those laws, enact those laws to change those structures. So how do we do that? And I think that, and how do we do that without publicly financed campaigns? Because right now it is actually very challenging for a lot of people to succeed in their electoral bids, going up against all of this corporate money if they don't take corporate money themselves, right? So how do we compete against this rigged system where they have all of this money going up against us, who have against people like us who have convictions and beliefs and aren't willing to take money from corporations because we know that would be compromising our values? And the answer to that question, I think, is that we need to organize. We need to organize. We need to have our campaigns be based around mass organizing. And so we need to use the organizing movements and successes that we see in grassroots movements, in movements like March for Our Lives, First Sunrise, for YCAT, for Michigan Youth, for Youth Climate Strike, and take those principles and apply them to our campaigns for progressive policies or our campaigns for progressive candidates. So that's like what our campaign is doing. Our campaign is creating a huge army of committed young people to go out there and talk to all the voters in our district. And we are competing with big money through big organizing. And I think that that is really the way for us to ultimately address the systemic and structural problems by electing people who are big believers in big organizing as the way to compete against big money.
All right, thank you so much. So we're gonna move into our second question, which is, how do you view climate justice as an intersectional movement connected to social justice and other movements for liberation? Max, if you'd like to speak on that.
Sure, yeah. This is also something I've, it's interesting, like once there's votes that are presented in front of me, to actually look at them from this lens and, really see how at the core of all of it is an equity issue. I find that a lot of people, the climate justice movement, especially YCAT, really understands that it comes down to equity, but there are a lot of people that are, in political circles that are like, all right, how do we reduce our carbon emissions? Like, let's cut our carbon, metric tons or whatever it is. And that's not, yes, that's somewhat effective at reducing our total, carbon emissions around the world, but that's not, what can actually target the root cause of this problem, whether it's Corona, whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's, whatever crisis you're talking about. What is creating this issue for people is that there's systemic oppression of marginalized identities. And if we continue to ignore that, there are certain people in the society that are being displaced first before anyone else, that are suffering the most, when they're at the same time the less likely to be contributing to that, then we're lost in that argument, because people can't really come to a conclusion that it's hard to see this intersectionality. Oops, Aiden said move my camera down. So yeah, no, I really see part of our job as people going into electoral politics, and I touched on it, because it's such a broken system, that it's crucial that we are just sending people who are gonna rock the boat and go in kicking and screaming. Like, I'll tell you, like, once in dealing with these politicians, it's first of all, it's frustrating, because like it's just so difficult to actually like talk to them about these issues when it's, they debate the language and all this others, and they treat it as a game. And in reality, what we need, once you're in the room, we need people who are willing to push back as hard as they can. It's not about your experience as a politician. It's not about your experience within political circles. As long as you are, able to identify that these are intersectional issues, recognize that it's more than just what, one example agenda item that comes up to a vote. It's all a systemic, crisis that we're facing, and that we need people like everyone on this panel, like Nada, like Solomon, like Albert, to be entering those systems and just pushing as hard as we can. Because like I said, it's harm reduction. They're broken systems. They've been built to fail. We just need people pushing as hard as we can to get some concessions as much as we can, until we're able to hit that, that organizing moment where we can organize to a strike, where we can organize a mass mobilization of people, that we can restructure the society to start to actually cater to the working class, the people who, actually run this country, that, the people that are working, not the CEOs that, quote unquote, working, 10,000 times harder, which is than a fry cook, which is unreal. So yeah, I think all of it comes down to this huge goal for liberation from all of these systems. And I think climate justice is, really talking about the underlying systemic issues rather than talking about, what climate action is of reducing our carbon metric emissions, or, don't even get me into like our plastic straws and cutting down plastic usage. Like those discussions are just useless in the broader picture. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, Albert, would you like to speak to that question?
Yes, thank you. So when you're talking about climate justice, when you're talking about structural systemic racism, when you're talking about all of the issues that face a lot of people, we're talking about structures that provide power to those with wealth, those that are at the very top. When we look at all of the issues, for instance, just looking at the COVID crisis that we have, we see how it impacts folks from different backgrounds, from more marginalized areas, greater. When it comes to testing, who gets tested? Celebrities and the wealthy. When it comes to who is impacted, I believe in Solomann and Max, in your state, 14% of the population is Black, but 70+% of the current patients are Black. When it comes to the COVID crisis, this is just highlighting and demonstrating, that when we see issues, they simply impact people differently. And again, it is all because of the way our power is concentrated into the hands of those at the very top. The way that we take a look at all of these issues, we need to, first of all, diversify our leadership in all levels of government, from local all the way up to the federal government. Each one of those systems, each one of those centers of power are based on white supremacy, are based on a perpetuation of a ruling class over a working class. We need more people to stand up. We need more people to have the courage to stand up and say, I'm going to represent my friends and neighbors and family. Once we get more folks to stand up, we're going to get those different perspectives. We're going to get those different vantage points. And quite frankly, it is going to be to the benefit of the entire community. If we have all of our representatives, all of our leadership cut from the same cloth, there's going to be huge blind spots. We see that with the COVID crisis and how our federal government is taking care of that crisis by injecting trillions of dollars into Wall Street, by injecting trillions of dollars into the hands of those at the top, and saying somehow that's going to make things better for all of us, when the reality is we need to provide emergency economic supports to the people who are being affected right now. So for me, when I'm looking at the climate justice, when I'm looking at how it's the intersectionality of that with social justice and other movements, quite frankly, that's just it in a nutshell. Who's impacted? And who benefits. We need to stand up, not only through electoral politics, but like Solomann and Max has said before, through organizing and building solidarity together to affect that change.
Solomon, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, for sure. So in our district, we have Dearborn, Michigan, which is the biggest Muslim population center in the United States of America. And the south end of Dearborn has been really, really hit hard with a lot of environmental racism. So the south end of Dearborn is a community of primarily Yemeni, predominantly Arabic-speaking, Muslim, brown, low-income people. And they live right across the street from big factories, and so when you start driving down into the south end, you smell a lot of pollution, and you actually have to roll up your windows because it is just so prominent. And when we were knocking on doors in that area, and there was just all this like grime all along the walls. And some of the residents said, like, we wash our house like every week, but the grime just accumulates right back up, and then they'll just take their finger and they'll wipe it, and it's just like a really intense layer of dust, like, and pollution on their finger. So, you know, it's not a coincidence that that community keeps having factories being put in that area, despite, and it's not a coincidence that those people are brown, are poor, are Muslim, you know, aren't English speaking, right? And so when we are trying to think about climate change, we're thinking about the globe as a whole, and how marginalized communities will be disproportionately affected from the actual change of the climate, because, you know, we're going to have people who are not going to have the financial means to move, to relocate, who are going to be, who won't be able to relocate their farms or their businesses when crops are no longer able to grow in certain areas. So, like, there's that concern, but then there's also the concern that we see of pollution in local communities that would be alleviated if we were able to transition our entire economy to not be so dirty and so pollution centric, and instead to be a clean energy economy. So we would reduce the environmental racism that comes from having sacrifice zones, which are zones of a massive environmental degradation that often are in low-income communities. You know, we often have like a lot of nuclear waste being put in near a lot of low-income communities because they are not able to advocate for themselves as effectively as high-income communities because of the brokenness of our system. So then they get the brunt of the environmental injustice, which becomes environmental racism, right? And so with the Green New Deal, we would want to prioritize vulnerable communities when we are offering these millions of good-paying green energy unionized jobs, those that have been historically disadvantaged, in order to address the systemic inequity in our society. And then at the same time, we will be creating jobs that are unionized. So this would also be a really big boon for the labor movement, having millions of more people who are part of a union being working members of this country. So the Green New Deal to address our climate change solution can address, you know, both, of course, environmental concerns as well as labor concerns and race relations in this country.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move into our next question, which asks, what measures do you think that we have to take on both a local, state, and federal level to bring justice to marginalized communities, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic? Albert, if you'd like to speak on that.
Thank you. So I would divvy up the responsibilities for the federal versus the local, local really being the ones to execute, and the federal providing the funds. Here in this COVID crisis, what we've seen is a focus on the wrong things. We have, at the beginning of March, injected trillions of dollars into Wall Street, and really the only purpose of that was to maintain the assets of the 1%. This was followed by discussions and deliberations on what we're going to do for the people. And that took 3, 4, 5 days. Ultimately, what came out of that was some of us would receive $1,200 one time in May. And then the rest of us, well, I guess you're SOL. Meanwhile, another $500 billion was given to corporations with no strings attached. This focus is because, again, of who we have in the halls of Congress. 52% of members of Congress are millionaires, multimillionaires. We need more citizen representatives representing us. The focus would be shifted back to the needs of the people. You need people that have the lived experience, understand the needs that are you know, really trying to balance the difference between, you know, do I buy more fuel today, or do I buy another gallon of milk for the kids? How do I go to work during this crisis? Looking at who are the people that are the essential workers and how they skew demographically. We need to really focus on taking care of those issues on the federal level, and that is by the power of the purse of Congress, providing the funds necessary in order to provide the emergency economic supports, providing the equipment necessary, and giving our states and our local governments the funds that they need in order to continue the very specific needs on the local level that the federal government simply can't understand for each and every individual local community. So that's how I would divide it up by having a federal government that is divvying out the funds and local governments that are executing.
Thank you. Max, would you like to speak on that as a city council person?
Sure, yeah, I really agree with what Albert said. I'm a little biased, but I mean, this is, and the answer for everything is that it needs to be going through a grassroots level. When it comes to addressing any solution, I think a lot of politicians, I mean, the state of Wisconsin, we're plagued by politicians who think they know the answer better than the city or whatever. And I think there's a tendency to say, okay, well, why don't we just figure it out here? And we saw what they did. They said, okay, we'll just dial out a one-time payment of $1,200, which didn't even give the college students who parents could claim them as dependents. So, I mean, I think that should just show of how that thinking is so flawed in itself that any one person at the top would think they know better than people at the bottom. And it always has to be that the application and actual decisions are made by not politicians. I don't think that the city council, frankly, could make the right decision sometimes. I think it needs to be made at a grassroots level where communities are being brought together through committees, through task force, that they're not like politicians sitting on these boards. And frankly, I'd be happy with no politicians allowed, but boards that are actually, talking about what the community needs. And I think this is an issue too. Like we talked about the systemic issues that are plaguing this country. I see, and this is something I bring up a lot, is I think the city of Madison wants to go towards some form of reparations. And I think that in itself, the idea that every person equally needs a cash payment, means testing in itself is really a bad idea. And I agree a lot of times when it is to make that decision, but there are underlying investments that need to be made that aren't just across the board. Like our affordable housing fund, there's no conditions at all for where it's specifically spent and gone. That's one example of how our city has really written out marginalized communities from our code of operating, how we operate as a city. They haven't recognized that some people in this city have it harder than others, which seems like common sense. And it's, a lot of politicians out there say that, but in reality, when it's, in operation, it's not helping those who need it most in the city. And we see it the south side of Madison, the north side of Madison continuously are left out of these policy discussions. There are a lot of special projects that we try to expand transportation to these areas. And that's one example of how we can, invest in. We're building a bus rapid transit line, investing in clean, renewable transportation to increase accessibility. And so I think right now, it's a broken system. Ideally, we would be able to, if we were in this situation, we will have a rapid response that actually adequately addresses the problem. But it really needs to come down to mutual aid, grassroots organizing. I think communities we're seeing, some communities are doing well, some aren't, but at, organizing themselves and really dealing with mutual aid. And I keep saying the word organizing, that's how it needs to be done during this time. Unfortunately, our government didn't really step in as much. They gave so much money to these corporate industries that it's wasted money when it could have just gone directly into the hands of citizens, rather than saying it has to go through their employer or has to go through banks, which could claim that they have a debt they owe or something. So I think it really comes down to just getting into the individuals, the individual level, and mutual aid, and doing whatever we can within the system to supplement that, rather than taking the charge ourselves and saying we know better than people in the community that are suffering right now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Solomon, would you like to speak to that question?
Yeah, for sure. So when we think about marginalized communities and the responses that we need to take both at a local and federal level, Albert mentioned, for my state in Michigan has, let me tell you guys, Michigan has been in the news so much during coronavirus for all of the wrong reasons. It's crazy. Everyone is always asking me what in the hell is going on in Michigan between our armed protesters and the abysmal disparity, racial disparities that we see going on in terms of caseloads and deaths. And that's what I want. There's just so much going on in our state. And like Albert pointed out, we have 40% of all deaths, or 40% of all of the deaths in Michigan are in the African American community, and African Americans only make up 14% of the entire population of Michigan, right? And like Michigan as a whole, in Detroit, which is heavily African American, that is like really that is the epicenter and the vast majority of all the cases here in our state. So we need to have racial justice policies and address the systemic racism that is exposed during this time of this national pandemic or this international pandemic. So, we want to make sure some of the racial justice policies that we want to see are that we want to federalize or to legalize marijuana at a federal level. We want to expunge the records of all nonviolent drug offenders, especially those with marijuana charges. And we want to make sure that we're investing in communities that have historically been uninvested in. And specifically when we think about healthcare, right? Healthcare is something that we have such disparate health outcomes in our country, where people from marginalized communities, people from like Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanics just have so much worse health outcomes than other groups in our country. So what can we do to address that issue? Well, we can create a Medicare for all system, which will guarantee that every single person in this country has healthcare as a human right, which is just a fancy way of saying if you're sick, you should be able to see a doctor. If you're sick, you should be able to get your medicine. And so that is a proposal that will help all people in this country, and it will disproportionately benefit the people who have been disproportionately oppressed, which are people in marginalized communities like African Americans, Hispanics, and Native American populations.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all for coming, taking your time to talk to us today about how we can make change in our broken system, whether it's COVID-19, capitalism, or the climate crisis. But just how and why can someone get involved with your campaign? Max, if you want to start, or support you.
Sure. I'm at a local level, and we have a lot of grassroots organizing help that we're doing. That my election is going to be in April of next year, so a year from now. If you really want to get involved, go to maxformadison.com. Though I would really stress that you actually get involved in YCAT, because I think that's even more impactful than any electoral work that I could be doing, is actually doing the grassroots organizing that IFA and that the members of YCAT are doing, the mutual aid that they're doing during this time of crisis. I think it's crucial, and it's way more impactful than obviously I'm going to be out there doing all the work, and your support would we would really appreciate it. But getting involved in these grassroots organizations is super important to making a difference.
All right, Albert, how can people get involved in your campaign? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. So you can get involved. We've, like I said, got 2 more days of voting. We are the original vote by mail state, having voted by mail for over 20 years. But you can get involved. The most important thing that you can do at this point is, if you are in the 3rd district, go ahead and vote, turn in your ballot. Secondly, if you aren't in the 3rd district, or if you have other folks that are, encourage them to vote Albert Lee by the 19th, by Tuesday, 8 p.m. Turn it into the ballot box. You can find more information about our campaign at albertlee2020.com. And we are obviously 100% funded by the people, so we are always encouraging folks to chip in what they can as well at the same address. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Solomon, how can people get involved in your campaign?
Yeah, for sure. So our campaign is completely just like Albert's, 100% grassroots, powered by the people. So if you can chip in, that'd be awesome. But I know that a lot of our viewers today are probably high school students, college students, maybe even younger. So something that everyone can get involved with is that we've got a huge internship program We have people from across the country, and we're very excited and proud of that. It's a remote internship program. Our election is in about 2.5 months away, so we still have a little bit of time, and we have a really great program that anyone can get involved with in our fellowship, our internship program. And it's a great way to meet a bunch of other really awesome, passionate activists, young people from across the country, and it's a great opportunity to use your time during this pandemic to actually advance the progressive agenda that we're all trying to fight for. So if you're interested in being an intern or a fellow on our campaign, you can apply at solomonnrajput.com. That's SOLOMONRAJPUT.com. And the application only takes 30 seconds. And I personally interview every single person that wants to join our campaign. So we would love to have you guys.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for everyone who's watching. If you'd like to get involved with YCAT, Youth Climate Action Team, start a hub, or apply for our leadership, you can head to ycat.us/join. And thank you all for joining.